you're not paying more, if it was the exact same price and it really helps you accomplish your goals, it helps you retire your husband, they should want to do it. But the problem is a lot of times we just get 100% tied into them just doing a transaction with you, okay? It's transactional. It's not relational, and it takes out the emotion out of it. And we're just like, man, we can save you, that's almost 50% savings, the difference between 13 and whatever. It's a 33% savings, okay? And your bill's $300 a month. That's going to save you $100 a month, and that's $1,200 a year. I can't believe you wouldn't do it. Right? You get into that kind of mode, but you're not telling them sometimes what you're trying to get accomplished. Hey, here's the reason why I'm doing this. I would really appreciate it if you'd do business with me. And hey, if it didn't cost you anything, would you consider being my customer? Okay? Now, that's something that, honestly, I don't do a good enough of a job of doing. I think we could all do a better job at a whole lot of things. Wouldn't you agree? Okay? So I know that I'm not the greatest at that either, because as a gentleman, or maybe just a man, I'm not always a gentleman, but as a man, sometimes I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to tell somebody something's going to make me cry. You know what I mean? That's not kind of how I roll, to be honest with you. So it's a different dynamic. And when I first got into business, the first 2 years, I didn't really have a strong why. I really didn't. I mean, I wanted to make more money. That's what I wanted to do, okay? Because I'm money motivated and I am business minded, okay? And that's what I wanted to do. But I didn't really have a serious why. And, when Jarrad and I talked at the end of 2015, I said, hey, Jarrad, if I'm not making X amount of dollars a month at this deal, I'm out. And it had a comma and two numbers on the other side of it, okay? So it wasn't like, a small number. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, that's the kind of money I need to make to do this business part-time. And, that's what I need to do. He goes, well, man, we got to figure out what's going on, I started doing some evaluation. I started looking at, he's like, well, hey, who's doing your three-way calls? I was like, I don't need a three-way call. I can close anybody, okay? I don't need that. Have you looked at my license plate? You know what it says? Closing, C-L-O-S-I-N-G, okay? And above it says always be on my license plate frame, okay? I don't need help. Well, the reality is, I was uneducated on the process of this business and how that works, okay? So I thought it was what's effective, and I was pretty effective, I thought. But it's not what's effective, it's what's duplicatable, okay? So that's something you got to figure out. And I wasn't doing any duplication. I was doing addition, okay? And so Mary Amledo kind of did that thing with me where she says, hey, Doug, come here. Okay? She's like, you're doing addition, and you need to be doing multiplication. And I was like, ooh. That's pretty strong, okay? So, I think it was Einstein that said the eighth power of the world is the power of compounding, multiplying numbers times numbers, okay? It makes a huge difference. It's a big difference between adding numbers plus numbers. So, 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6, right? That's not very big. But then 2 times 2 times 2, that'd be 4, and then that'd be 8, right? So it's 33% more just in those two iterations, okay? So multiplication is what we're looking for. So anyway, the next thing Jarrad says to me is, what are you going to do differently? And I was like, I don't know, man. I'm just out there winging it. I mean, I just kind of been okay at business, and so I'm just doing what I do. And so we came up with this idea to study some other leaders. And I had a radio show here in Dallas at that time, so we started this ambitious radio, the Ambit Energy's Ambitious 50. I started interviewing 50 top leaders. Started asking them, hey, what are y'all doing? How's it working? What are your struggles? How does that work? And we put it in a podcast format. It's on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, but we did 50 interviews over a year period of time back in 2016. And strangely, what happened was my business started to grow. My business started to multiply. I started doing three-way calls. There was a whole different dynamic that occurred in my business where from about the first week of January through August, I got promoted to executive consultant. So I had, my kids were in my business, and one of them was a senior consultant at the time, and they did a whole lot of work. They were really aggressive at working their business. Okay? All right? Okay? So, I really didn't have a whole lot going on, but it was just a situation where I was getting after it and doing my thing. But I learned from these other leaders, and, we put together a game plan to get promoted to executive consultant and got there. So, part of that process was getting to my why. I really had to figure out what was my why. Why did I need to do it? What was going on? What was going on in my life? And some of you guys, have heard, I mentioned a little bit earlier about having an Inc. 500 company and some of that stuff, and that was great, okay? It was cool. That was fantastic. The problem was that Inc. 500 company that I had that was doing almost $10 million a year in revenue, it wasn't doing $10 million a year in revenue anymore, okay? We had some situations that had occurred. Some things had kind of not gone as we had planned it. And as I started making that push to get to executive consultant, next we had a situation where my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer 3 months after that, okay? So it would have been easy for me to, crawl up under the stage and just say, I got stuff going on, I'm not going to be able to work my Ambit business, okay? But I had made a commitment to do it, and I really wanted to make sure eventually we could have some of that financial freedom, because some of the hard work that I had done for my company for something like 17 or 18 years, things had changed, okay? And it wasn't doing the kind of revenue that it was before, and we weren't making as much money. And, sometimes, has anybody ever felt like the world was stacked up against you? Okay? You ever felt like the world was falling apart? You ever felt like, that your job wasn't going good, your family wasn't going good? I mean, there's all this stuff, right? You ever had that feeling? Well, that's kind of the same thing. It's like going from being on top of the world to not being on top of the world, okay? And so, anyway, through that process, I really had to figure out my why, because I had 2 kids that had grown up with, a situation where we had done pretty well, and my kids never really wanted for anything, and I tried not to spoil them, but they did have a pretty nice life, and their expectation was, going to school. Their expectation was, graduating without having student loan debt, because Daddy had said, hey, you make certain grades, and you don't have to worry about student loan debt. Okay, and I'd saved some money for student loans. For school. I'll tell you guys, I think I saved something like $40,000 per kid, and I felt like that was one heck of a job. I really did. I thought $80,000 I'd save for my kids. I thought that was good until my daughter went to Dallas Baptist University, and it's $170,000 to go there. And that all of a sudden would just, it didn't make sense. So, when it came to a why, really what it comes down to me is, and I was kind of studying some things in Proverbs, and it talks about a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, okay? Has anybody ever heard that before? Okay? So, when I read that, I thought, that would be cool, and that was kind of always my intention. I really had this dream of, $10 million is my number, okay? Not earning $10 million, but having $10 million in the bank, okay? So $10 million in the bank at 5% net money, okay, net after taxes, is $500,000 a year, okay? I figure anybody can survive on $500,000 a year. Who could survive on $500,000 a year, all right? So I felt like I could survive on $500,000 a year. So I thought, what if I had $10 million in the bank? I lived on $500,000 a year. That means that's 50. Let's see here. That was $50,000 a month, basically. Okay, that's $10,000 a week, roughly. That means Monday through Friday, I got to get up every single day and figure out a way to spend $2,000. Okay, and then on the weekends, I got to slum it. All right, and so I figured that would work, but that would leave my $10 million in the bank. So that was always my goal. I was going to grow my company, sell it, exit, set $10 million on the side, and then that would provide for my family for generations. But unfortunately, that wasn't an option anymore. Okay, there were some obstacles that came in, and so as I was reading through Proverbs, I was like, but that may not happen. That leaving something for the next generation. So I started looking into it as I was making this push to get to EC, and I said, that's what my goal is going to be, to leave an inheritance for my children's children. Okay, and then interestingly enough, as I'm going through putting this game plan together, a couple months later, my son comes to me and says, hey, Dad, Michaela's pregnant. I said, really? Do you know what caused that? Okay? And it was one of those kind of situations where, you fast forward, a few, almost 2 years. Now I got a granddaughter. She's 13 months old. Just the most beautiful little thing, and just I can see her every day. Just quite a joy. But that wasn't part of the plan either. Okay? That was a totally different dynamic. But the next generation is here, okay? So one of the thoughts that I had is a reality now, okay? The next generation. So do I want to leave something for her? Absolutely, okay? So who's seen my granddaughter on Facebook or something like that, okay? So I think she's cute, okay? I'm sure y'all got cute kids and grandkids too, but I think she's the cutest, okay? But with that being said, that really is truly part of the why now, is that next generation. So when some knucklehead tries to tell me that 13 cents is Tien says this, he's like, it don't take a rocket scientist to see that 9 cents is less than 13 cents, okay? It doesn't take that. But when I can show a picture of my granddaughter and say, hey, look, because of Ambit, and this is to this point, my kids are not going to have any student loan debt, okay? I've been able to pay for my daughter's education at Dallas Baptist cash the whole entire way, okay? Through that. I've not touched any of the money for my kids at all, their college funds. That's sitting there. And I keep sweating it out and working harder and putting it aside. But that next generation now, imagine $40,000 compounding over 15 or 20 years. What that comes out to, okay? So that does leave an inheritance for my children's children, my baby granddaughter Nova. It's there right now. So when I go to someone and say, hey, look, this is going to help me and my family accomplish our goals, and what my goal is, does anybody care to help you make more money other than your upline? Okay? They don't care about you making more money. They care about them. Everybody's tuned into this channel called WIIFM. What's in it for me? Okay? That's what they're tuned into. But if it doesn't cost you anything, and it'll really help me out, it'll help me pay for my granddaughter's college education because I can leave the money alone right now for that next generation, would you consider being my customer? Most people would say yes. And then whenever I show them that it's 9 cents instead of 13 or whatever the current situation is, does that make a difference? You dang right it makes a difference. Okay, that's what it's all about, is helping people in that way. So when it comes to really writing out your why, we've got just maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. Who else wants to step up and get uncomfortable and come up and talk about their why real quick? Paul, come on up. Woo! Good job, man. All right, let us know who you are, where you're from, and your current pen level.
I'm senior consultant Paul Mitchell. I live in Plano with my wife Carrie and our 5 children. And anybody that knows me knows I'm not uncomfortable getting up in front of an audience. But I'm uncomfortable now. Okay. When I joined Ambit, the first time I saw a business presentation was in 2012 in July. The guy that eventually recruited me, who lives in Chicago,